The worst thing to do is to be afraid to make a decision because you fear that you're going to be wrong, so you don't make any decision, which is a decision in itself, and then you stagnate and don't make any progress. I'm Michael Mogill, founder and CEO of Crisp, the nation's #1 law firm growth company. I've built my business through practice, not theory. Crisp started with just $500 to my name and has grown to over 8 figures in revenue over the last few years, earning a spot on the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing private companies in America. Our approach has been to take everything we've learned about generating massive growth within our own organization and help the country's most ambitious and committed law firm owners do the same for theirs. In each episode of this podcast, I sit down with innovative market leaders from the legal industry and beyond to learn from those who thrive in the face of adversity, challenge the status quo, and define what it means to be a true game changer.
This is Jessica, Head of Coaching Strategy at Crisp, and today we're flipping the script for another special edition episode to get Michael's take on the surprising impact of supposedly insignificant decisions, why the most successful entrepreneurs operate with healthy paranoia, and how to surround yourself with supportive, growth-minded advocates.
People say it's lonely at the top. I think you're going about it the wrong way. That's only if you're trying to do everything on your own. That's why you feel lonely, because you don't have the right support network around you. The best thing you can do there, if you're an entrepreneur, let's say you run a law firm, is surround yourself with other growth-minded firm owners.
That's coming up on the Game Changing Attorney podcast. Michael, haven't seen you in a long time. Welcome back to AMMA.
I know, Jessica. It's been, I don't know, about an hour since we last saw each other. So this is great. I'm excited to be back. I will say that these podcasts and this podcast as a whole has just been incredibly rewarding. I'm on the phone with people now every single week, and they're telling me that they listen to the podcast, they listen to every episode. I don't know for sure if they do.
Yeah.
What they're saying, maybe they're just doing it to be nice. But
ask them, what's your favorite?
What's your favorite episode, right? They say, I love them all. What is it from the office space when they say, I love Michael Bolton. Oh yeah, what's your favorite record? And he says, to be honest, I love them all. That's the best answer, right? It's like, I read your book. Oh yeah, what was your favorite chapter?
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, I love them all. Even the introduction and the acknowledgement at the end, right?
Yes.
What you think of the forward, right? So anyway, I just want to thank everybody who does listen to this podcast. It means a lot. That is why we do it. That is why we do this free podcast, and we'll continue to keep it free. It's not free to produce. I wish it was. But we will keep the podcast free, no ads, nothing like that. And all we ask is that if you get any sort of value from it, just simply leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And this helps us reach more people. And we will not run any ads. And we don't even run any ads. It's not even about the money. It's more so I'm not a big fan of just being censored in any way. And I want our guests to be able to come on and say whatever they want. It's interesting. It's like we had Morgan Housel on the podcast recently, and he drops an F-bomb, and he says to me, oh man, oops, that's not going to get you in trouble with your sponsors. And I was like, Morgan, don't even worry about it. You can drop as many F-bombs as you like, man. Be your true, authentic self. Same thing with entrepreneurship. It's interesting whenever I see entrepreneurs and starting to not necessarily filter themselves, but they ask for permission to do something. Let's say they want to make some sort of investment in their business. And I always ask them, did you become an entrepreneur so that you could ask for permission? Or that so you didn't have to ask for permission? Because it seemed like the thing you were doing before you were an entrepreneur, before you started your firm, you had to ask for permission. But chances are, if you started a business, you want to do things your way, work with the clients you wanted to work with, spend your time how you wanted to spend it, and ultimately do what you wanted to do, which in many cases does not involve asking for permission. So that is also one of the reasons we don't run ads on the podcast. But this is the AMMA. You guys submit the questions. We answer the questions. You can text us 404-531-7691. In fact, I'll do something fun for the next, let's say, 5 people that text us at 404-531-7691, and you share what you enjoy the most about the podcast, maybe your favorite episode. We will send you some cool swag in the mail. That's just for the next 5 people that are listening. You know what? There's a lot of people listening. Let's make the next 22 people. How about that?
22,
there
of course.
Go. Text us 404-531-7691. What your favorite episode has been, what you enjoy about the podcast. That's it. We'll send you some free swag.
Can't be all the episodes though, right?
Can't
say. Gotta be a specific one.
If you say I love them all, I'm not sending you any swag.
All right. So with that, we will kick off today's AMMA. And This one I think is going to be really great just because people get in their heads a lot. So question number 1, I often find myself second guessing my decisions and fearing that I'll make a mistake that could jeopardize my firm's reputation. How can I develop greater decision-making confidence, especially when facing the constant pressure of maintaining my firm's reputation?
Jeff Bezos has this concept where he talks about, one-way doors and two-way doors. And most decisions are two-way doors, meaning that if you make a decision, it's not the end-all be-all. It's not going to wipe you out. And even if you're wrong, it's okay, because then you can go back, you can make a different decision, you can change course and be okay. The one-way doors are the very rare decisions that there's no going back, right? So you want to be very, very intentional. You want to think those through, but you may make like 1 or 2 of those a year, right? 99% of decisions are these two-way doors. So the first part of this is understanding that most decisions that you make don't have to be final, right? Like, you're making decisions based on the information that you have at the time, and you want to be able to exercise your best judgment. But let's say you're deciding in terms of making some sort of investment in the law firm, and you want to run some sort of marketing campaign. You say, all right, cool, I want to do it, right? And this happens all the time with us, right? We allocate, ad spend to certain campaigns that we're running. We have certain things in mind that we want to do and we believe are going to be successful. Sometimes a week goes by, a month goes by, multiple months go by. It's not driving the results that we want to drive. And we have an opportunity to iterate on that and change our approach and reallocate, right? So that we can eventually be right. Okay. So it doesn't mean that you're stuck with that, saying we're just going to continue to do it this way. You can adjust and adapt. And ultimately we use it as R&D, like research and development, to get more data back and then make better decisions based on the data. So you can iterate on your decisions. Similarly, it's understanding that at the end of the day, it's decisions. I hope I'm not going to sound too like meta when I say this. I think I gave this example at this point, maybe over a year ago on the podcast. I think it was on a podcast, where you never know sometimes what the right decision would have been, because hindsight is 20/20. So for example, let's say you are running late one day and you're going to the airport and you decide to,
stop and get coffee.
You stop and get coffee and you get caught in traffic and you arrive at the airport. Turns out, you miss your flight, and now that starts to affect other things later in the day for you. And you're just like, man, I shouldn't have stopped for coffee. But then what if you find out that plane went down? And you're like, well, I guess it was a good thing that I stopped for coffee. So the decisions just are. A lot of times, if you look back at some of the most pivotal moments in your life, it was just happenstance. Like the people that you meet in the situations that you meet them. Another example being, I remember the first time, I met Alexander Shannara, how our friendship was born. And we were at a conference in Miami, and I've told the story before, but those that aren't familiar with this is just an example of you never know. I spoke at the conference, and then I was going to fly out early, but I felt bad leaving the team there because we were exhibiting, we had a booth, and I said, look, let's just change my flight so I can fly out on the later flight. That way I could help the team pack up and then we could fly back together. So I ended up doing that, and then that flight got delayed, ironically, and then it got delayed again, and we ended up getting back to Atlanta. It was probably past midnight, and we're at baggage claim, and it turns out that Alex is on the same flight and his flight got delayed, and we happened to bump into each other in baggage claim, and we would have never bumped into each other had it not been for the fact that I decided to change my flight because I wanted to return with our team, and then those flights got delayed, and then we happened to meet, and now we've got a great relationship and a great friendship.
Right.
So you never know what a decision can lead to. The other aspect of this is how do you improve your decision-making confidence? One, it's you don't put so much pressure on yourself to be perfect. It's let's say, you're making the best decision with the information that you have. You want to hire the perfect person? Well, you can have a great hiring process. You can vet them appropriately. You can do test assignments. You can check references. You can do everything you can to increase the probability of having the right fit person. But at the end of the day, these are people, and you can't control if something happens in this person's life that affects their performance at your law firm.
Right.
But you can make the best decision at the time that you're making that decision.
Exactly.
And you build confidence through really a series of just being decisive and understanding that, well, I don't always have to be right, but I am going to be decisive and we're going to figure things out so I can be wrong, then eventually right, which is kind of my approach. It's okay, I may be wrong, let's try it out, but then you continue to make decisions and you eventually get there, right? You iterate on the past ones. So it's you don't just allow yourself to fail. It's something's not working, you change course and you correct course and you continue to adjust and adapt. You figure it out. Okay, this person didn't work out. Great, we hire another one. Okay, that person didn't work out. Why? Maybe the training and onboarding wasn't right. Okay, let's improve that. Hire another person. Okay, that person didn't work out. Why? Why is that? Maybe we didn't have the right systems and processes in place. Maybe we didn't have the right KPIs, the key performance indicators to measure them. Okay, put those in place. Try again. And eventually you get there. But the worst thing to do is to be afraid to make a decision because you fear that you're going to be wrong. So you don't make any decision, which is a decision in itself. And then you stagnate and don't make any progress. And you build confidence through constantly making decisions and being decisive and understanding that you are actually leaning and you're betting on yourself and your adaptability and your resourcefulness to actually figure things out as you go along. So you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be decisive and being willing to iterate and correct course.
Yeah. I think it's also committing I am much more risk adverse than you, but it's like the question also around second guessing is like, commit. If you're going to make the decision, commit. Like you can sit there and wallow and reflect and be like, is it the right one? Is it the right one? Just take action of some sort.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. Question number 2. Despite positive feedback from clients and colleagues, I constantly worry that I'm not living up to their expectations and that I'll eventually let them down. How can I manage these negative thoughts?
What's to say it's a negative thought? I hear that, and I hear somebody who cares deeply about their clients and doing a great job. Guess what? I had that thought when, I don't know, we were at under $1 million. I've had that thought when we were over 50 million. So I think it's, in some ways, there's the Andy Grove, who's the former CEO of Intel, saying only the paranoid survive. Now, you don't want to have like these thoughts if it's debilitating, it paralyzes you, your ability to actually do the work. But at the same time, the fact that you care and you obsess over it and you constantly feel that like, you know what, we could be doing better, we could be doing better, we could be doing better, is not a bad thing. I mean, you look at some of the best coaches on the planet in the NFL, in college football, really in all sports, they constantly feel this way. They come in and they constantly see everything that is wrong and all the things that need to be fixed. And they're like, what are you talking about? You just won a world championship. Yeah. How do you think we won that? We didn't win that by thinking everything is fine. What you should be worried about is the one day you come in, you think everything is fine and perfect and you figured it all out and now you're good because you got a sledgehammer coming around the corner and you don't even know it yet, right? There's a blind spot that you don't see because there's always something to work on. There's always something to improve. And ask your clients, right? Would you rather me assume that you're doing great? Or would you rather me assume that I'm not living up to your expectation? And they probably say, I'd rather you assume that I'm not living up to our expectation because that's going to be the forcing function and the impetus for you and your team to constantly improve and do better. I don't know. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with it as long as it's not preventing you from being able to take action and execute. But at the same time, it's just, there's nothing wrong with caring. And there's nothing wrong with about obsessing over delivering a really great client experience. And those that do it tend to lead really great organizations.
Yeah, I could not agree more. All right, to close us out with this one. So I spend so much time focused on my business that I've lost touch with many of my friends. The isolation is starting to affect my motivation and productivity. So how can I balance my professional commitments with maintaining personal relationships?
Yeah, nothing wrong with personal relationships. You want to have some friends and nothing wrong with that. It's important to you. If it's important to you, then you can prioritize it and you can make time for it. So the short answer is, and then the longer one is better, but the short answer is that you can make time for this. There's the difference between a to-do list and a calendar, right? A to-do list is never ending. It's kind of like, when people send you emails, they're just adding tasks to your to-do list. A calendar is like how you're going to spend your time.
And your focus.
Exactly, and your focus. And if you can shift your mindset from to-do list to calendar, you'll be immediately more productive. So meaning that you start putting things on the calendar of when you're going to do them. And similarly, if you want to spend more time with friends, you can schedule a dinner every other week or once a month and block it out in the calendar in advance. This is what I do, right? Like I'll reach out to someone and say, hey man, let's grab dinner next month. Let's grab dinner 2 months from now. And they're also entrepreneurs. So they're like, yeah, it's cool. And we just block it out on the calendar and then it happens. So that's the simple way to do it. If it's important to you and you can prioritize it, then just put it on the calendar and don't move it.
Yeah.
But the longer answer is that chances are a lot of this loneliness, I think, stems from the fact of like, if you don't have the right peer group or support system around you. So sometimes, when I hear people say, oh, I want to spend more time with my friends, and then they do, and they find they don't have anything in common with their friends anymore because their head is all up in the business and they're thinking about, strategy and culture and leadership, and their friends are interested in, getting the little, I don't know, whatever that award was at Taco Mac or Buffalo Wild Wings if you drink all the different beers, right? Yeah. And so they meet up with their friends and they're like, okay, well, clearly we care about different things now. We don't have much in common with the guys, I went to high school with, or maybe the people that I went to college with, whatever. And that's why you feel lonely, because you don't have the right support network around you. I mean, the best thing you can do there, if you're an entrepreneur, let's say you run a law firm, is surround yourself with other growth-minded firm owners, like people that aren't going to give you a hard time because you can't hang out with them, right? Or people aren't going to give you a hard time because you're not available to do lunch today, because they understand. They understand what you're going through because they're also going through it as well. And they're going to support you. I have friends where sometimes we won't talk for a year or more, maybe like 2 years. My best friends, we can go 2 years without speaking and we can connect again and it's like no time has ever passed.
Yeah.
The people that I will literally cut out of my life are the ones where they don't hear from you for, a month. They think, is something wrong? Like, do you not care anymore? You don't understand, you must be so busy. And they start to guilt you for
you've changed.
Being ambitious. Yeah, you've changed. You're not the same, that sort of thing. It's like, okay, delete, goodbye. Yeah. It gets much simpler that way. But I think it's really surrounding yourself with people that are also growth-minded. I mean, it's one of the reasons we created the coaching program. It's one of the reasons we have 1,000 firms that are just speaking the same language. There could be in all sorts of different jurisdictions, different cities, different states, different practice areas, but they're all committed to building really great organizations and having really great cultures and making a really great impact for their clients. So when they go out to dinner, it's like, boom, one of us, right? It's like they can have an amazing conversation. They can leave fulfilled. They text with one another. They're messaging with one another. They're in each other's weddings. And so maybe it's just more of a question of maybe you need to upgrade your peer group, to people that you have a little bit more in common with. And that's normal, right? People change, interests evolve, that sort of thing. And it doesn't always have to be all business. Sometimes just the fact that somebody is another entrepreneur and they run a law firm, maybe you guys run a triathlon together or an Ironman.
Yeah.
Or maybe you care about racing, right? Like cars. Maybe you love F1. There's a bunch of people I text with. We'll watch the F1 races. And again, we're not talking about business. We're talking about F1. Somehow then comes back to a business conversation saying hey, the difference between the person in first place and the person in 20th place was like a second or 2 seconds. And you're like, look at that level, right? But even so, it's like we have that level of mutual respect where you're like, okay, this is a person who's also been to war and back. So, we just have more things in common. So that's what I would encourage you to do. Perhaps consider just leveling up your peer group to surround yourself with advocates and people who want to see you win and people who want to see you succeed. And similarly, you want to see them win and them succeed. And then you're not going to feel so lonely. And if it really is important to you to one of these extroverted people that just thrives off of being around other human beings, and then schedule the dinner, or schedule the lunch, dedicate the time. You're not doing open heart surgery.
Right.
You can absolutely make time for a dinner once a month. You could probably do it even more frequently than that. I mean, yes, you are building a business, and again, it doesn't even have to be a dinner. Maybe you just have, a weekly call you do with someone. Maybe, some people we just send memes to each other. We just text each other memes. It's just hilarious. Sometimes we're not even sending words. We're just sending funny pictures or videos. Okay. So sometimes you just got to do that.
Yeah. And if you do miss the dinner, you got to recognize everything's a choice. It's not sacrifice. I think a lot of people are like, oh, I sacrificed this, I sacrificed that. You're choosing it. Own it.
I remember one time, so I had dinner scheduled with with another entrepreneur running a great business. It was like a $400 million business. And we had this dinner scheduled a month out, and the week was approaching. It was going to be on a Friday night. And I remember that Friday morning, I was like, man, I had a lot going on. And I messaged him hey man, I know we had this dinner planned. And he's like, let me stop you right there. I got all sorts of stuff going on right now. You want to just reschedule it? Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, man. He's like, that's a huge relief.
Right,
and
done.
They were sending funny memes to each other for the rest of the night. So it's all good. They understand. They're not going to give you a hard time because you're taking care of business or you're executing or you're leveling up. They're happy for you, right? The steak can wait. It's like,
exactly.
Fine. They'll come out and help you. They'll come out and support you. That's the way I look at it. It doesn't have to be lonely. People say it's lonely at the top. I think you're going about it the wrong way. That's only if you're trying to do everything on your own.
Yeah. You got to get out of your head.
That's right.
All right. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
You've been listening to the Game Changing Attorney podcast with Michael Mogill. If you found this episode valuable, here are 3 free ways that we can help you grow your law firm. Number 1, download the first chapter of Michael's book absolutely free at gamechangingattorney.com. Number 2, you can shoot Michael a text at 404-531-7691 and ask him any question you'd like. You might just hear the answer on the next episode. And finally, number 3, if you can leave this podcast a 5-star review, it will help us gain access to more influential thought leaders and bring their lessons learned here to you. For more information on this episode, see the show notes in your podcast app or visit legalpodcast.com.